Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. We thank you for listening wherever you are and however you're tuning in with us. We would like to just go ahead and encourage you to like, share, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your colleagues, share with your loved ones, your mother-in-law, whoever. Just spread this podcast far and wide. My name's Caleb. I am on the Startup Junkie team. I am with my co-hosts, Jeff Ameriine and Davis McEntire. How are y'all today?
Really good.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here, Caleb.
Well, we are glad to have you, and we are also glad to introduce you to our guest today, Shelby Matussak. Shelby is the founder of Dead Lemon Games, and Dead Lemon Games recently developed and launched a new board game, and we're going to talk to him all about it. But before we get in, I just want to welcome you, Shelby, to the show.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be on today.
We're excited to have you. So, Shelby, before we really dive into the nuts and bolts of everything, I would love to hear or have you share kind of your backstory with us and how you got into the world of entrepreneurship.
The world of entrepreneurship for me is a very relatively sort of fresh sort of thing. And I formed Dead Lemon Games just August of last year, and it has been an extremely educational experience. I've definitely have learned a lot with diving into this endeavor, and it wouldn't have ever happened had it not been for a number of different things from downtime and work situations and living situations changing from the pandemic, all the way up to kind of like deciding to sort of go out on a limb, and also sort of my characteristic trait of when I grab a hold of something, I feel passionate about it, I go 110% and give it everything I can and take everything onto myself. And basically just do everything I can to get out there and do as much research and learn as much as possible to try to accomplish whatever that goal is, or whatever that creative outlet is at the time. So, like I said, really new for me, and it wouldn't have ever happened had I not had this idea for this board game. And then, like I said, the time and the sort of drive to put the effort forth to produce the board game. And with that being said, with the board game, just a quick little background of what happens when you want to do something. If you do design a board game and you want to put it out into the world, there are two main things you can do with it. You can pitch it to publishers, like a book or a piece of media, or you can self-publish it, and that's where you essentially form the company around the idea. You have the umbrella, and you build everything up underneath that and do it all yourself. And that is what happened with me and this idea for launching this game and getting this game rolling and trying to be passionate about it and deliver that passion to other people out there in the world, share my ideas, share my passion for board games and all the benefits that I believe they can bring to people. And I decided to do that through the formation of Dead Lemon Games last summer.
So why board games versus digital? We've seen, Cards Against Humanity and variants of that have kind of become more popular. Give us the whole board game story. Why board games versus something else?
Yeah, well, board games, especially compared to digital formatting, because the digital formatting of a game, you imagine an individual being, and a lot of times just being completely alone and solitary. I mean, over the last 15 years, of course, with the development of being online and having an online presence, of course, there's communication and other things working like that, but nothing really compares to the experience of physically being in a space with other individuals and trying to work whatever the problem is that the game is setting forth in front of you. And that's what board games really do. And the board games create all these opportunities that allow for people to interact and sort of build up all these sort of all these sort of traits and all these sort of benefits that they can gather from health-wise, anything from socialization to cognitive skills, problem-solving skills, how to communicate with other people effectively. All these things come through in those real life situations when you're in person with people. And I'm a true diehard believer that face-to-face communication is absolutely key and super important to us as humans. And the evolution of technology has definitely pulled away from that, or evolutionary people or would say, you know, that it's just evolving, of course, the way that we communicate. But I don't think there's any substitute for being in a physical space with a number of people and being set forth with a problem or an objective and having to work together to sort of accomplish a goal, a shared goal, whether it be even, you know, a friendly competition, or it could be cooperatively, which co-op games have definitely started to really rise up. Co-op board games have definitely started to rise up over the past 5-10 years as well.
Gotcha.
And I'd be interested in you having shared kind of your experience. So, you know, what you were doing before Dead Lemon Games, and, you know, you had mentioned to me before about being displaced by the pandemic, and that kind of led to your desire to kind of build this game and pursue this. Can you speak to, you know, that process of you know, what you were doing before, and then what motivated you to pursue, you know, gaming?
Absolutely. And you know, that's sort of, you know, all those weird things that were happening with people internally during the beginning of the pandemic and the height of the pandemic, where there was a lot of solid, you know, a lot of people living in solitude and a lot of quarantining. People were dealing with a lot of different things, whether it was being laid off from work, which happened to me, and having to sort of be even more reclusive than you might have been before. Individuals who, you know, now are not able to go out and engage in those social groups that they were used to doing, whatever it is, whether it be, you know, your bridge club, or you're going out bowling, or, you know, your friendly guy poker night, whatever it is. All those things started to slowly, you know, spin out of control, and people couldn't do them anymore. And board games had always been one of my creative outlets and one of my outlets for socialization and interacting with other friends. And so when all those things shut down, I started, like a lot of other people, you know, that were going through those weird things, especially if they were laid off or displaced. They, you know, started to get a little depressed, started to maybe get a little cabin fever, and trying to find out ways to cope with those things through different mechanisms. And people are still dealing with that stuff, especially even coming out. There's a whole new like wave of different anxieties and stresses, even with coming back to normalcy in this new transitional phase. But that had a lot to do with my mindset in that time frame for developing and working on Lonely Undead. I had this idea for a game on a back burner. I'd loved games for so long. I was having some issues dealing with internally with some depression, and I missed playing games. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to focus on these creative outlets that I know can occupy myself, things that I love, things that'll help me sane and keep me happy. And so I focused on, like, you know, things like music and art and design. And I started working on this game, and it got to the point where I decided, like, hey, I've started developing this game so much, I've started to play it with one or two other people under, you know, strict parameters, and it's really starting to work out pretty well. How great would it be if I could take this thing and try to, you know, take my values and the things that I feel passionate about, that games can bring to people, and try to deliver it out to them, especially, you know, through utilizing the time that we had at that moment to try to make that happen. So it all kind of, like, I was encouraged from that, you know, that isolation and that solidarity, and then that sort of that idea of needing people to be around helped encourage me to sort of work on the game even more. And then I was like, well, now I have all this game. I don't have a full-time job anymore because I was laid off. So why don't I just take this time and my resources and my energy and put it all forth into this project and just see what happens?
Give us the elevator pitch on the game. How's it work?
Okay, so the game itself is a zombie-themed board game, and the basically what I wanted to do with Lonely Undead, you have these ideas of zombie things, whether it be a movie or a book. Everyone has these stereotypes that sort of flood their mind when you start talking about zombie-themed things. You think about humans that are going out and they are maybe in a post-apocalyptic sort of event. They're barricading themselves up. They're gathering resources and weapons, and they're out to, you know, bash the brains in of zombies, or take out zombies, or defend themselves and barricade themselves up. And with Lonely Undead, I'm taking all those recycled stereotypes of all those things with zombie media, and I'm just flipping them on their head and breathing new life into the genre, doing things differently, and also adding my own sort of flavor and my own personality into it by keeping it sort of tongue-in-cheek, really sort of like light and humorous instead of dark overtones, minimizing thoughts and imagery and verbiage around violence, and instead keeping it really lighthearted, adding humor into the mix and little quips, and making the people that you play as, instead of these, bat wielding humans, you're playing the zombies. And I'm really creating this sort of almost sympathetic environment where you're sort of viewing the world through these zombies at the beginning of an event, not in the middle of it. They're just recently becoming zombies, so they're still dealing with these like sentient thoughts. They're really confused. They have some ideas of what they're doing. But so in the game, you're a zombie and you're recently infected and you're seeking solidarity, you're seeking friendship. But the only way that you know how to make friends is to, unfortunately for the unsuspecting locals, is to bite and infect them, therefore converting them into a zombie and making a new best friend.
So you get to kill Woody Harrelson character is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
you get to go around and try to, make people zombies as a zombie and try to convert this little town into your own like little community.
It's like a zombie missionary.
Right. In a lot of ways, yeah.
Very
not getting religious with the conversion.
No. On the other side of that equation, I got you.
Well, I know you, Shelby. I know you touched on, board games, building, flexing, cognitive abilities and different types of stuff like that nature. What kind of cognitive abilities can we expect to be like flexed in a game like Lonely Undead?
So there's definitely problem solving. There's different levels and layered strategy sort of aspects. You create also, depending on if you're playing competitively or cooperatively, you're trying to create these combinations and looking ahead into the future with these different mechanisms to solve these little mini problems and to accomplish your goals. And then if you're doing it cooperatively, you're looking at the other players and you're seeing what sort of attributes they have to bring to the table. And you're saying, okay, well, I have this and you have that. How can we take these two things and make them work together to accomplish our goals? So there's definitely like team building. There's definitely, like I said, problem solving. There's strategy building and looking ahead and sort of, there's not really any math or anything like that really involved necessarily. It's mostly just like sort of like layered strategy and looking ahead and minor problem solving. And then, like I said, team building and working together and social skills, of course.
If there was math involved, I probably wouldn't want to play it. Just me personally. I'm curious to hear you talk about or speak to, as you're kind of doing some customer discovery and figuring out, what people think about things they like and don't like about the game and kind of honing in what the process of creating this game. You're doing this during a period of time when a lot of people are kind of shut in, almost kind of quarantined, dealing with that element of it all. How do you go about, playing a game that requires people to be sitting around a table when everybody is kind of during a period of time where everybody's kind of shut off? Like, how do you go about that?
Yeah, that was definitely really difficult for me in the developmental process because beta testing a product with unbiased individuals is extremely important for the development of the product, and so that was definitely a hurdle and a leap into some hard territory for me to navigate. Luckily, over the last couple years, and especially during the beginning of the pandemic, there was this flood into a new sort of area of board games in a digital formatting. There is a number of online platforms that basically take board games exactly how they are, and they recreate this in a digital format. And you're almost like playing like a top-down sort of bird's eye view, or you're assuming a seat and a position at a table, and you're playing a board game just through your computer. Just like we are here talking and seeing each other, you can be sharing your screen and sharing also your image of you playing the video game. Twitch has allowed that to happen a lot as well. But there's Tabletop Simulator, Tabletop Topia, Game Arena. These are different platforms that you can go on, and there's just a litany of modern board games and classic board games that you can play. Tabletop Simulator actually is a user interface that is built so that individuals can go on and build their own board games. They essentially lay out all these different tools for you, and you can create any board game within their capabilities. And so I was able to utilize their interface and their platform, and I made Lonely Undead, the board game, in a digital formatting, and I was able to utilize that through my audience building, as well as I was developing and marketing through all the online platforms, because obviously it was a lot harder to market and promote in a physical sense. And I was able to seek out and find individuals that were stoked and interested in play testing the game through the digital sense. Beyond that, I think during the pandemic, I had like maybe four physical play tests, and they were socially distanced with masks under strict parameters at a table in a public space. And so, and the people who come from the first one were repeat. Actually, most of them were repeat the next time around. But the digital platform made it very useful to work on the game and get testing going on those with real people, and help develop.
No, it's early days, but how have you been funding the path to market with the game, and how are you thinking about it for the future?
How have I been? I'm sorry, Jeff? How have I been funding marketing?
Yeah, it's the question of capital. Are you bootstrapping where it's all internal resources? Are you thinking about some Kickstarter campaigns? What's your thoughts about how you really, if your desire is to really get wide exposure and to kind of blow this thing up, how are you going about it?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously there's a number of different mediums I've been going through personally with personal financing. I've been seeking out a little bit of investing as far as reaching those tendrils out and reaching more people through those mediums. And then, of course, yes, I'm utilizing Kickstarter essentially with that crowd building, with that audience building to help continue to develop and help build financing to essentially move the product from being, a fully developed prototype into full manufacture. And that won't happen, of course, unless obviously like without full investment, or as I would like to do it anyway, through the crowdfunding platform, because I believe that crowdfunding is a really great way to go ahead and simultaneously build the audience that's already ready to purchase the game before you make the mistake of possibly manufacturing a full product. And then you have all these things that you don't have pre-orders for or whatever it is. So definitely, a number of personal financing with a couple of small, friends and family investors to help out that have been built into the LLC. And then beyond that, yes, using the Kickstarter to essentially fund the full manufacturing run of the product while simultaneously building that audience and that fan base.
Do you think you'll always keep the sort of analog true board format and a digital format? Will you have both available?
Absolutely, yeah. Because the digital format allows people to try the game, to actually get them, like most people, you see the board game, you read about it, and modern board games, it's kind of interesting, the market for modern board games, because there's thousands of games that come out each year, but most people don't have an actual exposure to a lot of those products. Most of those products aren't going on the shelves in retail. You're not going to see them at Target. They're all through like specialty, the publishers themselves, these small-time indie publishers online. They're running them through Kickstarter campaigns. They're running them through their own websites and their own social circles, and you don't see them in retail and you don't see them at the stores. The digital platform allows you to basically, advertise through all those other digital like mediums and all those social mediums, and get people stoked on the product, and then you direct them direct to your website or to the Kickstarter, and then they can pre-order and buy the product and send it to their door. That's the only way you get a lot of these indie products and these indie games, because you will not see them out in stores. Hundreds and hundreds of games each year just go by the wayside, and no one has any idea they exist.
And I know you also have a co-founder, right, Shelby, that you've developed Dead Living Games with. Tell me about the process of kind of reaching out and having a co-founder, and kind of what he brings to the table in the process of building Dead Living Games.
Yeah, I got really lucky with my co-founder, because he's one of my oldest and best friends. Extremely highly motivated, very genuinely nice man. His name is Scott Forbush. He owns Round Mountain Coffee in Conway, Arkansas, and I think his coffee shop's been going strong for almost 4 years now, maybe coming on 5. I'm not 100% sure about that. But and during the pandemics, I'm usually not in Little Rock. I'm usually moving around a lot. But of course, I found myself here because of the pandemic. And of course, I reached out to Scott, being so close, an old friend, and started to try to hang out with him and play a game or two, you know, once or twice a month. Told him about Lonely Undead, and he was actually the driving force behind Dead Lemon Games, actually, because I wanted to pitch it to a publisher. I didn't want to do all the business stuff, and I didn't want to go through all the extra work. I just wanted to develop the game, give it to publishers, and say, hey, it's fine. I'll take the small cut. Please put my name on the box. It's fine, you know. And he was just like, no, you can do it. And I was like, there's so much work involved. There's like all the art. There's all this other stuff in the background. He's like, I know, but like I did it. Like you can do it. I know you can. You have the spirit. I believe in you. And he did this to me for a couple weeks.
So Scott, with his coffee company, I know that y'all have rolled out kind of a branded roast of coffee beans. Tell me a little bit about that. Is that kind of like, seems like that's an opportunity to build a little bit of community around the game by having a branded, you know, zombie coffee.
Absolutely. You know, that actually came to me. All my best ideas come to me when I'm laying in bed trying to go to sleep, which is like the worst time, you know. It's like you're finally relaxed, you've wound down, you're like, okay, time for sleep. And the mind starts rolling a little bit. And it's like those are the moments where your mind has like the ability to really relax and just like kind of pop these new random things in and like, you know, play with them. And I was like, wait, you know, I thought about Scott and the coffee, and I was like, how cool would it be if we could like, you know, do something with the coffee? I mean, everyone loves coffee, and actually, you know, introverts and people that play board games also ironically really love coffee. But then again, like who really doesn't like coffee? It's a pretty lovable thing. And so I had this idea, you know, why don't we try to do something with coffee, utilize Scott and his resources, and utilize me in some design aspects, and team up. And, you know, I'll buy a bag of beans from Guatemala. We'll bring it in, and he can small batch roast it, and we can continue to build our communities simultaneously while also creating exposure for the game. And so he was pumped on the idea when I threw it to him. He was like, absolutely, this will be easy. You know, we'll buy the bags, you'll design the art for the labels, you know, we'll buy a bag of coffee, we'll get it here. I already have the resources to get it here, and I'll start small batch roasting and we'll push it out. And so we started to do that, and it had great rapport. People were in it. And the great thing about the coffee though as well is that it allowed a lot of my friends and family and a lot of people that may not be big board game people or may not have much exposure to board games, it gave them a way to support and also be a part of the community and the process without having to really care about board games at all. So that was also really neat. And that's been working out really well. And he's been selling it in the shop there, and I've been selling it on the website. And there's a QR code on the back, directs people direct to the Dead Lemon website itself, which helps continue to promote the game. And also, it was just a lot of fun to do the coffee. And when designing the labels, I had a lot of fun. I would like make the little flavor notes, and I think for the flavor notes, I wrote like warm earth and rotten flesh and friendship and iron, and Scott was like, we have to put the real flavor notes on the bag. And I was like, okay, I get it, we will, but can we just make them tiny and down below? He was like, that's fine. But yeah, the coffee collaboration has been a blast and a lot of fun, and still pushing out coffee, and people are still buying coffee, and it's delicious and fun.
You going to draw people into the coffee shop to play in a tournament or some such, or will there be some event-based stuff at the coffee shop?
Yeah, we've already had two events at the coffee shop after our events where we provided you know, we had the coffee bar was open for an extra hour after close, and we demoed the game and had play testing events in the shop, and those were more recently. Over the last couple months, we've had two events. And they were a lot of fun. They were a blast, and that was a nice way to like get the Conway community sort of like, you know, come and introduced to the game. And it was a great rapport, and it was a really good time.
Yeah, it seems like a great way to gain exposure and kind of build a community around it. Do you have any advice for maybe first-time creators? I know you're a first-time creator, first-time entrepreneurs that are maybe listening in to, any suggestions about thinking outside of the box, to market their products or anything like that?
Yeah, when dealing with the subject of thinking outside of the box, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is as a first-time creator, and if you're a first-time creator, you're depending on what sort of resources you have, you probably might not have a lot at your fingertips, and you basically probably most people don't know who you are and what you're doing, and so that being said, you really got to look at what you do have close to you, who do you know locally, who do you know that might be stoked on your passionate, or you could give them your passionate spiel, and they might be like, I like what you're doing here, and find those people that you like what they're doing as well, and see how you could possibly work together. I think that's critical with starting local and trying to look at your resources that you have, right next to them, being like, I gotta like seek out investors online and I gotta really put myself out there. I think it really starts at home and who you have within arm's reach, people that you've known your whole life, and maybe they've taken a risk before, maybe they have some insight, maybe they have some knowledge and some resources. Because going in as a new entrepreneur, it's terrifying. You're constantly online and trying to learn as much as possible. You're getting feedback from other individuals on whatever you're testing, and maybe the feedback is awful. Maybe it's crushing, and you don't know how to really deal with that. And that being said, on that note, just always remember sample size of one, okay? Because if it's just one person that makes a comment, then just take it with a grain of salt. That was something I really had to learn with testing the game, is that you have all these opinions, and anybody that tests a product, they have a lot of opinions. They want to be a part of the process, and they want to give their 2 cents. So I know I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent. So take all feedback with a grain of salt. And as a new entrepreneur, like start small, start close to yourself. Like look at your friends, look at your family, see what resources you have that are already there that maybe you can figure out how to weave them into your process. Get advice from people that maybe have started a business that or maybe gone out on a limb, or there's just so much involved with building a business from the ground roots, and it's not all online. It's really convoluted sometimes if you do go seeking for it online, and a simple conversation, you can get a lot more done.
So what's winning look like over the course of the next 5 years? You've got this thing started, and you've got some traction, you very creative sort of merchandising or tied to a tangible product as well with the coffee play. What's it look like over the next 5 years?
I'd love to really keep developing and working, and if Lonely Undead really does gain traction and really take off, there's a lot of other opportunities with the game itself for expansion, added content. When I was developing and designing the game, those were really important to me as a game player, as I wanted to create a game that was not only could it be useful in a number of different situations, whether it be you wanted to sit down and run through like sort of a quick game, and maybe you had players that weren't as familiar with board games, but you wanted to sort of gateway them in. There's a way that you can utilize Lonely Undead to introduce board games to people. But then at the same time, like Lonely Undead has ways to play that makes it for maybe people who like more strategy and a little bit more in-depth gameplay. So I designed it that way because I really wanted to create a game that could be very expandable and could be built upon over time. And so I'd love to continue to produce content with Lonely Undead. I have other games sort of on the back burner and other sort of ideas for fun little projects that involve the online community, since that's really, the online communities really helped build me up. And they were my major consultant groups and my major resources for questions and information, all these different forums, as I was alone at home in my tin box in my bus, sort of learning as I go. So I have really fun ideas. I think that, to keep working with those outlets and keep working with those online communities to build community games sort of together and utilize those forums. If it keeps gaining traction, Lonely Undead takes off, I would love to, of course, make another edition, expandable content. I'd love to produce another game out there at some point. Of course, it would probably be a lot later on after another content release from Lonely Undead. But then I would also love to, at the same time, on the back burner, get a ball rolling on a project that would be fun to sort of build a game with those communities to essentially move almost sort of like a mass movement through Kickstarter, and maybe have like a large group of individuals involved with building a game, the community build the game up and build that through Kickstarter all collectively. That's something that I would like to try to do. But time will tell to see if Dead Lemon Games continues onward and continues to gain traction, and we just hope for the best.
And the Magic School Bus stays part of the brand and the lore and the culture of the company, regardless, right?
Man, it really should. Like the bus has really been like an important part of the whole process. And I have I have a Twitch stream on Wednesdays. It's Board Games on a Bus. And right now, while the campaign is going, the Kickstarter is going. Of course, we always start with a game of Lonely Undead in some fashion. Me and my main cohort, the main person I play with, and then we play something else. But people love the Board Games on a Bus. They love the bus, and it's been a major part of the development, and it's really fun. People always popping in. They're like, "Are you really on a bus?" And we gotta like move the camera around. But it is a part of the background story, a part of the beginnings of Dead Lemon Games. So maybe I'll try to find a way to incorporate a little bit more creatively in the future. I don't know how long I'll be in the bus. It's not a thing of permanence.
Well, Shelby, one of the last questions we typically ask our guests, is giving them the opportunity to reflect on kind of the journey. You're very early stage, very, just getting your feet wet, so to speak, in the process. But if you had the opportunity to go back and visit with yourself, I say younger self, a year ago, to give yourself advice, what might that advice be?
Get more help. I mean, I took on everything. I told you a little bit about my personality and how I go 110%. And I took on everything when I took on Dead Lemon Games. And I mean, there's all the aspects of building up the business itself, but at the same time, this might be hard for a lot of people to envision, but I was developing the board game and doing all the art for the board game. So I was putting in an insane amount of hours on the bus, and I was like, it was almost like I was a crazy person, because I would just wake up and I would just like get my coffee and go sit down, and I would just be at the computer, like all day, and I would work like 8 a.m. to like midnight on a lot of days, and it was just like my weeks just kind of blurred together, and I just got so bogged down in the creative process, in my psyche. And I started to after a couple months, I had to be like, okay, I need a day, at least one day, probably two, completely detach, go do those things I love, get outside, go camp, go climb, don't bring the phone, don't bring anything, which is really kind of impossible to do nowadays. But I had to do it. So I would say, Shelby, you should have gotten more help. You could have definitely had help with this. But, being the one-man show and not having a lot of financial resources, it's just what I decided I had to do. And, maybe I didn't have to do it. Maybe I could have found ways to outsource and get some help. So definitely don't take on everything yourself. Even if there's small tasks and you have friends that can help divvy those things out, if you do have to kind of crunch some numbers and have to outsource a couple things to make and keep yourself sane, do that. That's way more important. Your mental health is way more important than overworking and trying to, get some things done.
So where can people find out more about you, about the business, about the Kickstarter campaign? Kind of this is your opportunity to reach 100,000 plus downloaded folks, our audience worldwide, on 100 different countries.
So, of course, deadlemongames.com. The company has a website, a lot of information up there about the startup of Dead Lemon Games and the Lonely Undead. Then there is also, of course, Facebook, where we have Dead Lemon Games has a Facebook page, and Lonely Undead does have a Facebook group, which is fun and interactive for people to get on there and chat and talk about the game. Then we are on Instagram as well. Dead Lemon Games is on Instagram. Do have Board Games on a Bus on Twitch, and it's live on Wednesdays and occasional other times. And I think that's about it. Yeah, the website, the Facebook, the Instagram, and we're all on the socials and easy to find.
Shelby, thanks for coming on, man. It's an amazing story, and don't let go of the bus. I think the bus is your superpower. Hang on to the bus.
I appreciate that. Yeah, between the bus and the mustache, it's a pretty solid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
Thanks
I
for
think you
coming
definitely qualify for coolest mustache on the show so far.
100%.
Yeah,
All right.
You get that award all day, Shelby, for sure.
Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate you, so take care.
See ya.
Thanks a lot, guys. Greatly appreciate it.
You bet.